Good day everyone! Today we will be discussing Chapter 11, Project Risk Management together with Miss Kyla G. Toro. Sa tinood lang, when we hear the word risk, we usually think of something negative. But today, we will learn how to manage these uncertainties para dili na tama problema sa mga projects. First, what exactly is Project Risk Management? Project risk management is the processes concerned with conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, responses, and monitoring on a project. Muni ang mga proseso of preparing ourselves for things that could happen during the project, whether good or bad. Our objective is simple: increase the probability of opportunities and decrease the impact of threats. Nagpasabot nga dapat palakason nato ang mga chance nga mahitabo ang mga goods opportunities ug atong lessen ang mga impact sa mga risk or threats. And project risk management also have 6 main processes to follow. First, risk management planning, risk identification, qualitative risk analysis, quantitative risk analysis, risk response planning, and lastly, risk monitoring and control. These processes all involve 3 key elements: inputs, tools and techniques, and lastly, outputs. The first step is risk management planning. So what is risk management planning? Risk management planning is simply preparing how its risk will be handled in a project. It ensures that the approach to identifying, analyzing, and controlling risk matches the project's importance and potential impact. This is where we decide how to approach risk in our specific project. We ask, who is responsible? What is the budget? For example, if we are building a new campus app, we decide here that the IT department handles technical risk while finance handles the budget. So dinhi pa lang na natay klaro nga plano. Next, inputs to risk management planning. There are 6. So the first one is project charter. So the project charter is already discussed na sa chapter 5 and chapter 3. So let's proceed to the second. So the second one is the organization's risk management policies. Some organizations may have predefined approaches to risk analysis and response that have to be tailored to a particular project. Third, define rules and responsibilities. Predefined rules, responsibilities, and authority levels for decision making will influence planning. Fourth, stakeholder risk tolerances. Different organizations and different individuals have different tolerances for risk. This may be expressed in policy statement, revealed in actions. Fifth, template for the organization risk management plan. Some organizations have developed templates or a pro forma standard for use by the project team. The organization will continuously improve the template based on the application and usefulness in the project. And lastly, work breakdown structure or WBS. The work breakdown structure is already discussed na po sa chapter 5 and chapter 3. So let's proceed to the tools and techniques for risk management planning. Narajig usa ka buok. So it is planning meetings. Project team hold planning meetings to develop the risk management plan. Attendees include the project manager, the project team leaders, any in the organization with responsibility to manage the risk planning and execution activities, key stakeholders, and others as needed. They use the risk management templates and other inputs as appropriate. Next, outputs from risk management. So there are only two. So risk management plan. So the risk management plan describe how risk identification, qualitative and quantitative analysis, response structured and performed during the project life cycle. The risk management plan does not address responses to individual risks. This is accomplished in the risk response plan, which is discussed in risk response planning and project processes. The risk management plan may include the following. So the first one is methodology or tools and the data sources. Second, rules and responsibilities. Third, budgeting and timing. Fourth, scoring and interpretation or definitions of probability and impact. Next, threshold. Next, reporting formats. And lastly, tracking. Next is risk identification. Dinhi mag-brainstorming na tato as like what could go wrong. And before that, what is risk identification? So risk identification kay isa ka iterative process, meaning mahimo ni siya buhaton balik-balik during sa project. Una, ang project team ang mo-identify sa risk. Unya, ang stakeholders o experts mahimong mo review para mas accurate ug walay bias ang analysis. Kung ma-identify na ang risk, usahay pwede dayon maghimo og simple solutions or responses para malikayan o makontrol ang risk. Next, inputs to risk identification. So there are 4 inputs. So the first one is risk management plan. So kini is usa ka plan na nga nag-explain kung saon pag-manage sa risk sa project. Muni ang guide sa team kung saon pag-identify, pag-analyze o pag-handle sa risk. Next, project planning outputs. Kini ang mga documents sa projects na makatabang sa pag-identify sa risk. Apil diri ang mga project charter, WBS, or Word breakdown structure, product description, schedule of cost estimates, resource plan, procurement plan, o list sa assumption o constraints. Kung i-review ni nga mga documents, mas masabtan sa team ang project o mas dali nila makita ang possible risk. Next, risk categories. Ang risk gi-group sa categories para masayon nila ma-identify o ma-manage. Sample, technical risk, problems related sa technology, quality o performance. Project management risk, problems sa planning paggamit sa time or resources. Sunod is organizational risk, internal problems sa organization, sama sa funding issues o context sa resources. Next is external risk, mga factors sa gikan sa gawa sama sa weather, legal changes, labor issues, o natural disaster. So the last input is historical information. So kini isang information or information gikan sa previous projects nga makatabang kaayo sa pag-identify sa risk. Pwede siya gamiton ang old project reports, lessons learned o research studies. Sa simple nga pagsabot, tan-awon nato ang past projects para mahibaw-an unsay mga risk nga nahitabo before o posibleng mahitabo usab. So next, tools and techniques for risk identification. So naa siya 5. So the first one is documentation reviews. So ang project team will review sa project plans, assumption, o previous project documents para makita ang possible risk. Sunod is information gathering techniques. So naa siya upat ka buok nga techniques. So the first one is brainstorming. So ang kani is ang team magtinabangay og share og ideas para makahimo og list sa possible risk. Kaduha is Dalpy technique. So kani siya is ang mga experts maghatag og opinion anonymously hangtod maka consensus sila sa possible risk. Tulo is interviewing. So ang interviewing is usa ka project managers o experts i-interview para makahatag sila og risk based sa ilang experience. So last techniques is SWOT analysis. So gi-analyze ang strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, o threats sa project para makita ang possible risk. So next is checklist. Ang checklist kay list sa common risk gikan sa previous project. Makatabang ni para mas paspas ma-identify ang mga risk. Pero dili gihapon tanan risk makita ani. Kaupat is ang assumptions analysis. So ang assumption analysis is usa ka projects nga kasagaran nag-base sa assumptions. Kung sayop o kuwang ang assumptions, mahimo ni siya sa risk project. Last one is diagramming techniques. So ang diagrams makatabang para makita ang cause and risk. Example, cause and effect diagram or fishbone. So kini dya is para makita ang root cause sa risk. Sunod is flow charts. Nagpakita kung saan pag-work sa process o sa possible nga naa ang risk. Sunod is influence diagrams. So nagpakita ni sa relasyon sa variables ug outcomes. So next is outputs from risk identification. So naa siya tulo. So the first one is risk. So ang risk is usa ka uncertain event or situation nga posibleng makaapekto sa project objectives. Mahimong positive man siya or negative ang effect. Second is triggers. So ang triggers kay mga warning signs nga posibleng mahimo ang risk or mahitabo ang risk. Example, kung ma-delay ang mga milestone, sign na nga posibleng ma-delay ang schedule pod sa project. Last one is inputs to other processes. So sahay ang risk identification makapakita nga kinahanglan jud i-improve ang ubang project processes sama sa WBS o project schedule para mas klaro ang pag-identify sa risk. After identifying risk, we do qualitative analysis. Ang point ani nga step kay dili lang basta maglista og problema. We need to prioritize them since we have limited time and resources. We use this process to figure out which risks are the most critical and need our instant attention. Like for example, a server crash, a high impact. So it gets a red flag. But if the risk is just a minor font color issue, that is low impact. So dili ta kaadyo mabalaka ana. Before we can analyze anything, we need the right information. So these are inputs. So there are 7 inputs. So the first one is risk management plan. Mo ni atong guidebook for risk rules, budget, and the scoring scales. Next is identified risk. The specific list of traits and triggers found during the identification phase. Next is project status. We need to know where we are in the project because risks change as the projects move forward. Next is project type. High-tech or new projects usually have different risks compared to repetitive projects. Next, data precision. Kini ang quality sa atong data. If the info is bad, the analysis is useless. Next is scales of probability and impact. The predefined levels like 1 to 5 or 0.1 to 0.9 we use to measure how bad a risk is. And lastly, assumptions. Hypotheses about the project that we need to test. Next, how do we do it? We use these tools and techniques. So there are 4. So the first one is the probability and impact assessment. We investigate each risk to see how likely it is and how big the effect will be. Next, probability or impact risk rating matrix. Kini ang table where we combine the two scores. Next is the project assumption testing. We check if our assumptions are actually true. If an assumption is false, it becomes a high priority risk. And lastly, data precision ranking. We check if our data is low quality. Dapat sigurado ta sa atong data para dili mali atong priority. To analyze a risk, we first look at its impact. Look at figure 11.1. It shows how we rate the effect of a risk on our project objectives like cost, schedule, scope, and quality. So next is ordinal versus cardinal skills. Notice that the top row we can use descriptive words like very low or very high. That's ordinal. Or we can use numbers like 0.05 to 0.8 and that's cardinal. The non-linear scales. Kabantay mo sa numbers, they are not just 1, 2, 3, 4. They jump from 0.4 to 0.8. This is a non-linear scale, which means our organization is very risk averse. Pasabot ani, allergic jud ta sa mga dagkong problema. So if we give them a much higher weight to make sure they stand out. For example, if a risk will cause the project schedule to slip by more than 20%, we rate that as very high. Finally, the outputs are the results of our work. So there are 4 outputs. The first one is risk ranking. So it is the general health of our project. Second, list of prioritized risk. It is our final to-do list of what to fix first. Third, list of risk for additional analysis. It is risks that are too complex and need to go to quantitative analysis for more math. And lastly, trends. We check if the project is becoming safer or riskier as we go on. After we rate the impact, we look at probability. Kung unsa ka possible nga mahitabo ang risk. We combine these two using the probability impact matrix shown in figure 11.3. So the first one is black or high risk. These are the high probability, high impact risk. Kini ang dapat nato tutukan dayon because they are need aggressive management. Second, light gray or moderate risk. These are in the middle. We keep an eye on them for further analysis. And last one is the dark gray or low risk. These are low priority. We just list them down para dili makalimutan. But they don't need a lot of resources right now. So dinhi nato makita which risk go to the next step, quantitative analysis, and which ones go directly to our response plan.
Good day everyone, I am Kyla G, Toro, and I'll be discussing the qualitative risk analysis. This is one of the most important processes in project risk management. So, quantitative risk analysis aims to numerically analyze the probability of each identified risk and its potential impact on project objectives such as cost, schedules, and overall performances. So unlike qualitative analysis which focuses on ranking risk, so qualitative analysis uses numerical data and statistical method to understand the possible outcomes of risk. So the main purpose of qualitative risk analysis is to estimate how risk can affect the project and determine which risk require the most attention. So by applying mathematical and statistical techniques, project managers can better predict potential losses, delays, or cost overruns. So there are several tools and techniques used in qualitative risk analysis. First is interviewing. So experts and stakeholders are interviewed to help determine probability distributions for different risks. So their experience and knowledge allow the project team to estimate the likelihood of risk and the possible range of outcomes. The second is sensitivity analysis. These techniques identifies which risks have the greatest potential impact on the project. So it analyzes how changes in one variable such as cost, time, or resource availability can influence the overall project outcomes. So this helps the team focus on the most critical risk. So third is decision tree analysis. This method uses a graphical representation of decisions and possible outcomes to calculate the expected monetary value or EMV of different choices. So evaluating probabilities and financial impacts, project managers can determine which decisions leads to the most beneficial outcome. So another important technique is simulation. So particularly Monte Carlo analysis, this method uses computer simulation to run thousands of possible scenarios based on different risk variables. So it helps estimate the range of possible project costs and complete dates. So giving mas clear pictures of uncertainty sa project. So kanya output of qualitative risk analysis is a prioritized list of qualified risk. So it also includes probabilistic analysis of the project, which shows the likelihood of achieving project objectives such as finishing within budgets or on a schedule. So qualitative risk analysis provides a data-driven approach to understanding sa project risk So by using numerical number analysis and simulation techniques, allocates, so ang project team can make more informed decisions. Risk response planning. So first, what is risk response planning? So it is the process of developing strategies and actions to address project risk. So its main purpose is to increase the chances of opportunities and reduce the impact of potential threats that may affect the project. So during this process, the project team evaluates individual or identify the risk and decides how to respond to them effectively. And then these responses help ensure that the project stays on schedules, within budget, and meets its objectives. And then for negative risk, also known as threats, so there are 4 common strategies used in risk response planning. The first one is avoidance. So changing the project plan to completely eliminate the threats, and then these also include or involve modifying the scope, adjusting the schedules, or choosing a different approaches so that the risk no longer exists. And then the second strategy is transference. So shifting the impact of the risk to a third party. So this does not eliminate the risk, but someone else become responsible for managing it. So example include purchasing insurance or using fixed price contracts with suppliers. And then the third strategy is mitigation. So reducing either the probability or the risk occurring or its potential impact. So the goal is to bring the risk down to an acceptable level. And then this might involve additional testing, improved planning, or implementing safety measures. So lastly is acceptance, the most important for me, the most important. And then acknowledging the risk and preparing to deal with it if mahitabo sa January. And then instead of preventing, the team creates contingency plans to respond quickly if the risk occurs. So the main output of this process is the risk response plan, which is documented in the risk register. So the risk register contains information such as identified risks, their possible impacts, the choosing responses, strategies, and the assigned responsibilities for managing team. So risk response planning helps project teams proactively manage uncertainties by preparing effective actions to reduce threats and protect the project success. Risk monitoring and controlling. So it is a process of tracking identified risk, monitoring residual risk, and identify new risk throughout the project. So its main purpose is to ensure that risks are properly managed and controlled during the entire project life cycle. So even after risks that have been identified and response plan have been created, so project team must continuously monitor the project environment because new risks can appear at anytime today. One of the key activities is risk monitoring and controlling, is executing the risk response plan. So this means ang project team carries out the strategies that were planned earlier to address potential risk. So another important activity is evaluating the effectiveness of risk responses, so that team check whether the implemented strategies are actually reducing the probability or if the impact of risk. So if responses are not effective, adjustments may needed. Syempre, mag-adjust yung ganun. Risk monitoring also involves continuous risk scanning throughout the project run cycle. So this means regularly reviewing or check the project to detect new risk, changing an existing risk, or risk now may no longer be relevant. So there are several tools na used in this process. So one of it is the risk audit, which involves reviewing how well risk management is included. How well. So are being followed and whether the planned responses are effective. So another is trend analysis, which means examine suggested projects importance data over time to identify patterns that may indicate sa potential risk. So lastly is na earned value analysis, which measures the project's performance in terms of cost and schedule to help determine whether the project is processing as planned. So the outputs of risk monitoring and controlling includes correct actions, which are the steps taken to fix problems or reduce risks and impacts. So it may also result to a project change request where modification to a project plan are proposed in responses to risk. So yeah, risk management plan used with JNL to ensure that the project continues to manage risk effectively. And then in summary, risk monitoring and controlling can really help ensure that risks are continuously tracked, managed, and responses throughout the project to support a successful project completion. Summary and conclusion. To summarize, risk management is not a one-time activity that only happens at the beginning of the project. So it is continuously process that take place throughout the entire project plan cycle. So project team must constantly identify, analyze, response, or monitor risk to ensure that the project stays on track. So effective risk management also involves proactive planning by identifying the possible risk early and preparing response strategies so that project teams can prevent small issues becoming major problem. This reduces the need for firefighting during the project execution. So our team rush to solve unexpected issues under pressures. So need yun na sila guys para magkuan ka mas possible sa mga intended objectives. So, successful projects depend on continuous and proactive risk management. So, by consistently monitoring risk and integrating risk planning into all aspects of projects, so team can improve decision making, reduce uncertainties, and increase the chance of project success.